Welcome to NTD News. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The world leaders at the G7 summit in France this weekend released a joint statement dealing with Hong Kong, Iran, and trade.
On trade, they called for the overhaul of the World Trade Organization. Specifically, they want to increase intellectual property protection, settle disputes more quickly, and to eliminate unfair trade practices. It echoes President Donald Trump's calls to reform the organization, which he accuses China of abusing. The world leaders said they stood behind the Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984. The declaration grants the city of Hong Kong a certain amount of autonomy from the rest of China. The leaders also called for violence to be avoided in street protests over a controversial extradition bill that has rocked the city in recent months. On Iran, the leaders were united in their opposition to the country becoming a nuclear nation. The G7 consists of France, Germany, the US, Japan, Canada, Australia, and the UK.
President Donald Trump saying a Chinese official contacted the U.S. to discuss trade talks, a day after the White House said the president regretted not raising tariffs further.
Trump, speaking on the sidelines of the G7 summit, said Chinese officials called U.S. trade counterparts overnight and offered to return to the negotiating table.
We were called, and we're going to start very shortly to negotiate. We'll see what happens, but I think we're going to make a deal because they don't want to lose their change.
The trade war between the U.S. and China, the world's two largest economies, escalated on Friday as both sides leveled more tariffs on each other's exports. Earlier on Monday, China's lead negotiator for trade talks with the U.S. said Beijing was willing to resolve its trade dispute with Washington. Trump praised Chinese leader Xi Jinping as a great leader and said the prospect of talks was a very positive development for the world.
And it's going to be great for China, it's going to be great for the U.S., it's going to be great for the world. He understands that, and he's able to do things that other people aren't able to do.
Trump added that the two sides will begin talking very seriously, saying that after the calls, he believes the Chinese mean business. China's foreign ministry confirmed on Monday that dialogue was needed to resolve the escalating trade dispute.
And on to Iran, President Trump said he has a good feeling that the Middle Eastern country will want to meet with the United States. He added that Iran has great potential, but he's looking for no nuclear and ballistic weapons. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on the president's hope for an agreement.
The president said it was realistic to think that a meeting between him and President of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, could happen in the upcoming weeks.
I think he's going to want to meet. I think Iran wants to get this situation straightened out.
The Iranian economy is under pressure from U.S. sanctions, a strategy expected to pressure the Islamic regime into a deal that would stop it from getting nuclear and ballistics weapons. Some Iranians believe the strategy is working.
It is working. We have information from inside the country that the regime is in a very bad situation.
Despite Iran's attack on an unmanned American drone this year and claims that it has breached its uranium cap, President Trump expressed hope for the nation.
I really believe that Iran can be a great nation. I'd like to see that happen.
While Trump said that he won't ease Iran's sanctions ahead of a possible meeting, he did say the G7 countries would consider crafting a letter of credit to Iran secured by its oil to help it get past a tough economic patch. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Leaders of the G7 nations have agreed to release more than $20 million of emergency aid to help countries battle wildfires in the Amazon rainforest, French President Emmanuel Macron said today.
The firefighters battling the devastating blazes in the Amazon rainforest are about to get some backup. This after the G7 leaders meeting in France agreed to a $20 million emergency aid package to help fight those fires. The record number of fires ravaging the rainforest has sparked international concern because of the Amazon's importance to the global environment. French President Emmanuel Macron spearheaded the deal.
The Amazon captures 14% of the CO2 in the world, and so the loss of the main lung of the planet is a global problem. No country can say that it doesn't affect them. Even if every country has to be respected in its sovereignty, it is impossible to compensate for the role of the Amazon.
The aid package comes as tensions flare between Macron and Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Macron last week accused the conservative Bolsonaro of lying about his environmental commitments. Bolsonaro, who wants to open the Amazon to more farming and mining, on Sunday mocked Macron's wife on Facebook. And on Monday, he questioned Macron's intentions, saying on Twitter any plan should not treat the Amazon like a colony or a no man's land. So far, nearly 80,000 fires have been recorded in Brazil this year through the weekend. Many of those fires are thought to have been started deliberately. Some 44,000 troops are stationed in the northern Amazon region to help. Officials say the G7 plan would be rolled out in 2 stages. The first stage involves sending firefighters and water bombers. The second involves protecting the forests and their biodiversity, then reforesting the region. Macron added that the G7 would draw up an initiative for the Amazon to be launched next month at the UN General Assembly.
And now to Hong Kong, where NTD reporter Jeremy Sandberg brings us direct reports from the escalating situation.
Train stations being shut down didn't stop thousands of protesters from gathering to march in the streets of Kuantan District on Saturday. The peaceful march ended with a break-off group continuing on to gather outside the local police station. Protesters set up barricades using pointed bamboo sticks and zip-tied metal fences as tensions began to rise.
So protesters are not happy about the train stations being closed. They've reinforced the barricades here at the end of the street, and the police are gathered here in large number. I saw a couple of officers with their air rifles out, and it's just kind of a standoff at the moment.
Police responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and beanbag rounds to disperse the crowds. As police moved forward, they were met with a volley of projectiles as protesters fell back. After falling back, protesters constructed more makeshift barricades and held their ground.
I think we're going to hold out here in this position for some time, but they will push us back eventually. I don't know if they would surround us or flank us from the other direction. They've done that before. So for now, I think we're going to stay in here for a while.
Protesters are seeking a response from the government on 5 demands, centered around a proposed bill that would allow individuals to be extradited to mainland China for trial without prior legal process in Hong Kong.
The police have to answer for their brutality during the protests. They have to.
Many protesters have grown frustrated and desperate as they feel their voices are not being heard.
Keeping an eye on Hong Kong and its situation, and thank you for standing with us. We appreciate it.
The conflict started again after another standoff, with protesters triggering another push from the police after throwing bricks and other objects off a nearby on-ramp. Police fired multiple rounds of tear gas and rubber bullets in the midst of the crowd, causing the group to eventually dissipate.
Protesters have fallen back after the police pressed forward twice. There was a lot of tear gas fired in what ended up to be a pretty intense day. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News, Hong Kong.
And as the massive protests in Hong Kong continue, demonstrators have got good at managing the tear gas sent their way by riot police.
The newest strategy is to use traffic cones to contain the gas coming from the gas canisters that police throw at them. They pour water into the cone to douse the shell, or use a tennis racket to hit the tear gas back. Big empty water bottles are also used to contain smoke. If all else fails, protesters throw wet clothes on top of the canisters. Protesters said instead of throwing canisters back at the police, they aim to stop the gas from being released to protect nearby residents and children first.
In Mexico, the government announced today that over 25 tons, that's over 51,000 pounds, of powdered fentanyl has been seized. Reports reveal the narcotics originated from Shanghai, China.
The shipment was seized in the city of Lázaro Cárdenas on its way to Culiacán, Sinaloa, home to the Sinaloa cartel. A government spokesperson explained that the seizure was a result of a joint operation led by the Mexican naval elements of the 10th Naval Zone and Lázaro Cárdenas Customs Enforcement personnel. According to authorities, investigators found the drugs inside a Danish-flagged vessel, whose cargo manifest indicated the presence of calcium chloride. A random sample of the powder was taken to a lab and later tested positive for fentanyl. Law enforcement sources say powdered fentanyl can be easily mass-produced into the black market oxycodone, known as Mexican Oxy. The deadly pills are often blamed for contributing to the opioid overdose crisis in the U.S. Officials seized 931 sacks of the substance, but the investigation is still ongoing. Earlier this week, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration in Arizona announced that over 1 million fentanyl pills were seized in the state in fiscal year 2019, a huge increase from 2018.
In California, some people are trying to break away from the current state to form a new one. NTD's Eileen Eng hears what an anti-communism expert and public speaker thinks of the proposal.
It's enlightening, and it is deep.
At a New California event this weekend, communism expert and public speaker Trevor Loudon was invited as a keynote speaker to share his thoughts about the movement. He said the idea of breaking away from the current California to form a new state is a good idea.
All the power is concentrated in the big cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco. So the people in the hinterland, the farmers, the people who actually do things for a living, are not represented. And you're getting a complete distortion and a complete dominance by the cities, who are all dominated by the left. And this is destroying California.
New California is a movement that aims to create a new state where personal liberty is put above government. It is composed of the royal counties of California. The red areas represent New California counties. The yellow areas are counties that would remain in California. However, the borders are not finalized yet. Their first legislature meeting was in July 2018. Since then, they have held several meetings to set up an assembly and a senate, representing each of the counties of New California. According to Loudon, California has communist influence.
Chinese government's got a huge influence in San Francisco and in Sacramento. They probably have more control over California than the federal government does.
In addition, leftist politics worsen the situation.
And they are just ramming their agenda down the throats of decent people in California, and they're bringing the country, if they had their way, they would make this country like Venezuela, this state like Venezuela. That is the trajectory they are on.
He is impressed that the people in charge of the New California movement understand that America was built on a spiritual foundation.
America is the only country in the world where your rights come from God, not the government.
Those in the movement plan to continue to hold meetings and pass resolutions for the new state. Eileen Eng, NTD News, San Luis Obispo, California.
Republican Congressman Sean Duffy, who represents northern Wisconsin in the House, will be resigning next month.
Duffy posted on his Facebook page Monday that he is resigning on September 23rd to spend more time with his family. Duffy said he recently learned that his 9th child, who is due in October, has a heart condition and will need even more love, time, and attention due to complications. The 47-year-old was first elected to Congress in 2010. He has been a staunch supporter of President Donald Trump.
We need to unify behind a new president who can strengthen, protect, and restore our nation for the next generation.
And has also been widely mentioned as a possible candidate for governor in 2022 or the U.S. Senate. The former cast member of MTV's The Real World, Boston, says he needs a break from public service in order to support his family. Democratic Governor Tony Evers will have to call a special election to fill the vacancy.
Now to Europe. The Turkish Coast Guard on Monday intercepted boats carrying around 240 migrants as they attempted to reach the Greek island of Lesbos.
The Coast Guard units carried out 7 operations in the western province of Çanakkale. Authorities say the migrants were sent to a repatriation center. All are Afghan, Iraqi, Iranian, and Syrian nationals. The number of people taking the journey has declined sharply since 2015, after Turkey began to exert more control over those trying to cross to the EU via its territory. Italy has been at the forefront of the migrant influx in the EU. Earlier this year, it shut down a migrant camp, one of the largest in the region, and tightened its sea rules for ships entering its waters without permission. These measures helped reduce the number of immigrants by over 80%, and that number continues to fall. Yet many still attempt the trip by sea, and Turkey still remains one of the main launching points.
In the Caribbean, Tropical Storm Dorian is gathering speed as it barrels west towards Barbados. Officials have advised the public to stay indoors, while locals are preparing for the onset of heavy wind and rain.
Tropical Storm Dorian is gathering speed as it barrels west towards Barbados. Officials have advised the public to stay indoors, while locals are preparing for the onset of heavy wind and rain. According to projections of the U.S. National Hurricane Center, the small tropical cyclone is expected to reach hurricane strength by Thursday, when it passes west of Puerto Rico and plows into the Dominican Republic. Dubbed Dorian, the cyclone is expected to bring tropical storm conditions to the Windward Islands late Monday and move into the eastern Caribbean Sea on Tuesday before churning towards Puerto Rico. The NHC reported that Dorian was about 205 miles east-southeast of Barbados, blowing maximum sustained winds of 60 miles per hour as of Monday morning. Tropical storm warnings are currently in effect for Barbados, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Martial artists from all over the world came together in New Jersey yesterday for the finals of the 2019 International Traditional Martial Arts Competition. NTD reporter Xiwen Rong spoke with some of the contestants and audience to learn more about what makes this so special. On August 25th, the 6th International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition finals successfully ended with 3 gold winners.
I am really happy, but mostly I am thankful and grateful for this, because NTD truly put their heart into preserving traditional Chinese martial arts and presenting it to the public. NTD's competition gives us an opportunity to speak with international martial artists. I think it's amazing.
Whether you win or lose is not the most important thing here, but whether you learn something from the experience. The competition has 7 divisions. There were 67 semifinalists, 39 of whom made it to the finals.
Just kind of honored that they would allow me to make it so far, and just I hope I can do my best.
For the audience, it wasn't only entertaining and educational, but also eye-opening to see this on such a grand scale.
It's almost unusual to see it, and to see it on a global stage almost. It's, I couldn't imagine seeing it here.
I come from Ecuador to see this competition.
Martial arts is so beautiful. I feel really happy and so excited by this.
Really wonderful. I saw them practicing and I was pretty amazed.
The contestants came from Asia, Europe, and North America with many different styles. Head judge of the martial arts competition, Yofu Lee, said the contestants shouldn't only acquire martial arts skills, but it must be in a traditional form.
Postures, movements, hands and eyes, even the spirit. Each style has its own characteristics, but it needs to maintain its traditional form.
Judge Lee hopes that through this competition, people will understand and learn more about traditional martial arts and its values. Reporting by NTD News, Xiwen Rong. Hollywood stars and fans flocked to this year's D23 Disney Expo over the weekend, catching exclusive glimpses of upcoming films like Star Wars and Frozen 2. New footage from Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker shows heroine Rey, played by Daisy Ridley, wielding a red two-sided lightsaber. Her display generated thunderous applause from 6,000 people in California's Anaheim Convention Center.
If some kid years from now is watching all 9 movies, that you want that story to feel like there's a beginning, middle, and an end. And so it was very important to us that we tell an ending that felt like a satisfying conclusion to these 3 trilogies.
The movie debuts in theaters this December and brings a final end to George Lucas's 40-year-old space saga. Meanwhile, co-director of Frozen, Chris Buck, said the November sequel will be set in the past and raised questions on how Elsa got her powers. Actress Evan Rachel Wood is also joining the cast.
And being able to lend my voice and sing in a Disney film when I feel like Disney taught me to sing in the first place, it's perfect. Everything's full circle.
And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer.